A very good evening to you. Welcome to Transform Kenya here on KTN News. My name is Eric Latif. Tonight we are going to have an intensive conversation around the Finance Bill 2024, the proposals contained in Finance Bill 2024 and how they are likely to impact both positively and likely negatively on the manufacturing sector in the country. We have a number of panelists with us in the studio and also some guest audiences from guests in the audience who are representing various sectors in the manufacturing sector. I want to introduce my panelists with me here. I want to start to my immediate left. FCPA Honorable Bill Okero is an industry expert. He is a legislator, has been a legislator in the National Assembly and in the Senate. And in those, he has chaired finance committees. He's been a shadow finance minister, and he has extensive experience on matters of budgeting, on the issue that we're talking about tonight, the finance bill, and how it goes through the process of budgeting in Parliament. And also, he's an industry player, so he'll also tell us how it's impacting him and the industry. Thank you very much for joining us, Bill Okero. CPA Philip Kakai is the chairperson of the Institute of Public Accountants of Kenya. He's a certified public accountant of Kenya himself and the current chair of ISPAC. He's a member of the Institute of Good Standing, certified professional mediator. Let's see if you can use some of those skills in mediating. He has over 20 years of extensive experience in leadership, financial accounting and management, budget management, audit, and project management gained from both the public and the private sector. Next to him is our lady for the evening, Christine Kahema Mudui. She is a tax expert. She is a founder and director at Alpha Tax and Business Advisory Services with over 18 years of experience in the tax and the business sphere, previously having worked at Coca-Cola and at KPMG. She's an advocate of the High Court. She's a certified public accountant of Kenya. She's a certified public secretary, and she has extensive experience on matters of public finance management. And next to her is Anthony. Anthony Mwangi is the CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, an accomplished professional, over 20 years of experience in governance and regulatory affairs, public policy, public affairs, communication, stakeholder management, business development, and that's why he's the CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, bringing together all the manufacturers who have subscribed in the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, engaging on their behalf with the various other stakeholders, including the government. He'll tell us tonight how much stakeholder engagement has happened from the industry, from the public, and with the government, with the angle of policy. And then finally, joining us is Eric Idua. Eric is the chairman of the Alcoholic Beverages Association of Kenya. He is representing the brewers, and they also have a couple of issues that they have to raise tonight. Eric understands very many things on matters of tax and policy, and especially on representing the industry. In the audience, we have several players, and my colleague, Noah Kipkemboi, will be engaging with them. Noah.
Well, a very good evening to you, Eric. Indeed, from the manufacturing sector, we have subsectors within this particular sector. And today in our audience, we have specific subsectors that will be highlighting how this particular bill and the proposals therein will be touching on them. We have players from the alcohol and beverage sector, as you've rightly put it, Eric. Petroleum subsector is a big one. E-mobility, we are saying we are going green with these proposals in the Finance Bill 2024. Are we really going green? Or is just a silent G right there? Also from the plastic subsector, heavily represented here, energy. And the whole issue is that as we have this engagement, we'll have very specific reaction and sentiments from specific sectors, which are very critical in reaction to this finance bill. So we'll be sampling the views of these subsector players and pick their mind in regards to Finance Bill 2024. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Noah. And yes, we'll be hearing from sector players who are in the audience this evening. It's a full 360 engagement on this. I want to start with my panelists, and starting with you, Mheshimiwa Bill Okero. You have been in Parliament. You have seen the process of budget making before the 2010 Constitution, after the 2010 Constitution, and in both. This time, there's from Finance Bill 2023 and now Finance Bill 2024, there's a lot of public engagement and public awareness on what's happening. But just take us from last year, July, an entire budget making process up to where we are now, how much engagement has there been with industry, with public, from government side, and also with Parliament?
Thank you very much. I think, let me start from the previous constitution before this one, and this current constitution. What is different and what is the same? Let me start with what is the same. The process of public participation does not start after the budget, by the way. It starts before the budget. You will see Treasury publish hearings, dates for hearings, well before, almost 6 months before they actually develop the budget. But so that one has been the same all through. Nothing in that one has changed. What has changed? The most fundamental thing which has changed is the process of budget making has been taken over by Parliament. This is under the new constitution. It used to be the mandate of Treasury. They would do the budget, keep it in a box sealed, especially the taxation measures would only be revealed when the minister tables his budget speech and says, this is it. Now it's different. Everything seems to be done in Parliament and by a team of experts in the State House. Treasury is on the fringes. I don't know how many of you have had Treasury CS and his PS talk about this budget. They are just on the fringes. Budget seems to be now done by the same people who are required to approve it. We go before them. So the focus has also shifted in terms of the public participation to significantly to after the bill has been published. That's when you see Parliament extensively engaging and saying they want to sit with you. They sit with this industry 2 or 3 times and sitting. But what we have seen in the last 2 years of extensive public engagement, both in terms of presentations, in terms of what we have seen is that the outcome has not been significant, really, in terms of the impact on the actual document. We saw it last year. In spite of thousands of Kenyans giving their views, the government eventually went ahead with most of the provisions that were in the finance bill. So that's why Kenyans then said, then what is the point of public participation? Even now you hear, I read somewhere today in the media saying, one of the government officials saying that the 2.5 for the motor vehicle will remain, come what may. So you're being told you might give all the views you want, but certain things, are cast in stone.
It's already cast in stone, or cast in cement.
So, and why would the government be so hard on this thing? I think there are other external factors which I think we must be privy to. All of us know that our financial situation as a country has not been good. We are on more or less been on a mortgage to IMFs and those international lenders. And so when you are particularly with those IMF, then the conditions for additional loans are always taxes. Because their main concern is where's the tax to repay the loan. And so I think that is unfortunately the situation we are in. But in terms of Parliament, I think regrettably, I think all the focus seems to be now on Parliament. They call the shots, and they're the ones who ideally would have been more sensitive than me and you, because they represent the voters. They represent the voters. They're the ones who should be feeling the pain of these things and saying no to Treasury and saying, sorry, this one we can't allow because it's going to hurt my voters. Right. But what we are seeing is they're the ones who are selling on behalf of the government, of the executive.
They represent the executive in this particular one.
Yep.
Is it the same thing that you feel, Philip? I mean, you've engaged, for example, you've even presented as ISPAC before the Finance and Planning Committee, and you've engaged with them not only on this particular issue of the finance bill, but through the cycle of the budgeting. There's a budget policy statement. There's the sectoral inputs that come in before, like Bill was telling us, and the budget policy statement, Parliament is engaged, and it's actually the one that approves and says, let's go ahead and give the Treasury authority to start planning on how to spend X amount of money. Is Parliament alive to the sentiments of the people?
Thank you very much, Latif, and the entire panel here, and the team we have here for this purpose of engaging. Now, like you've rightly put it, and my colleague FCP Bill Okero has put it, Parliament has a bigger role than before. But the question that arises, does Parliament use that opportunity as representatives of people to help in the budget making process. You'll notice that the budget policy statement comes out, they discuss it, and this year the budget policy statement gave a figure of 4.2 trillion. But later on we got the budget estimate still in Parliament, which brought an amount of 3.9 trillion. It gave us some hope that they are trying to reduce it. But from the discussion from the Budget and Appropriation Committee, we seem not to be on the same wavelengths of 3.9, because they have indicated that that is likely to go up. Of course, they left out quite a number of things. The feeding program of 4.9 billion, already that shows you that it was not really 3.9. So you'll find that it goes up. Now, we've really engaged as an institute in the budget making process for many years, and particularly, of course, you put it across nicely. Last year and this year has been really engaging. And the reason why I would quickly say is last year is the finance bill of 2023, when it came out, it had very punitive kind of taxes. So it made everybody wake up. As an institute, of course, we put our position there. We opposed most of those taxes. We even gave a legal opinion on the housing levy. It cannot be introduced in a finance act. It should be on its own. Initially, it was a levy, and then later on, it became a tax. We opposed the issue of double taxation on gross income, because you have your PAYE on gross, and then you have the housing levy on gross. Now we have the social health insurance fund on gross. And it seems to be the in thing. Now, this year we pushed our way. We were invited by Treasury, and we gave our views before the finance bill. And our views, I would say probably 2% was taken up. But most of them were not. But we are happy that at least now we were
At least you got a hearing.
We got a hearing. Now, come the finance bill, that is 2024, and we were privileged as an institute to be the first on 28th to give our views, and we went close by close with the members of Parliament, taking through the members of Parliament the effects, and of course applauding where it is okay, and saying this is good, but this is the impact for this one. And they gave us a very good hearing, good time. The question that arises fully is whether our views will be heard. But we say...
What's your gut feeling?
Our gut feeling is the method used last year hasn't changed. Take the views, take all the views, Mama Mboga, everybody. But we have this position. And like Bilo put it, FCPA, is we have some conditionalities with the situation we are in as an economy. We are through this World Bank funding, IMF funding. So when you walk on the streets of Nairobi and everywhere, you find somebody telling you, this one must remain. It's an IMF condition. So at the end of the day, you say, look, if it has to remain, why can't it start at a lower rate and not at a higher rate?
I'll come back to the
gradually
later, because you're raising an issue here of sovereignty. This is a matter of sovereignty.
So
is our budget being controlled from outside the borders of the Republic of Kenya?
We are hopeful that this time round they may drop a few of the issues. But again, when you look at how the finance bills have been prepared in the last 2 years, is that they prepare you to follow a certain route, and once you have taken that route, then they get you to they get them to,
they create a diversion.
They create a diversion. Like last year, it was housing bill, and then the 16% on petroleum levy we didn't talk about, and it went through. So this one, the real thing is the motor vehicle levy, and we'll make noise about it, but other taxes will also go through. But having said that, Latif, I would be wrong to say that we have focused so much on the finance bill. But the issue of expenditure, physical consolidation, expenditure, and even revenue rationalization of expenditure of government is the real thing. Because at the end of the day, the revenue-raising measures are pegged on their expenditure.
Yeah.
And the expenditure is really not discussed in detail. You just heard the chairman of the Budget and Appropriation Committee saying CDF will go up to this must happen, this must happen. So you'll find that we don't seem to be picking up things. The president says we have to live within our means, but we don't seem to see that happening.
We haven't defined the means.
We haven't defined the means.
It's a moving target.
It's a moving target. Supplementary budgets are done every now and then.
Right.
Reallocations are done. Moving up the figure. So it's really a tough one, I would say.
CPA Philip,
Thank you.
We'll come back to you. I mean, there are many issues that you raise here. Christine, like we've heard from the previous two speakers, where we are at right now is a culmination of a journey. We are getting towards the tail end of a journey. But there's something that's big here. There is the budget policy statement that has come to Parliament, and Parliament has looked at it, and Parliament has given feedback. And by okaying the BPS, Parliament has basically said it's okay for us to spend, even before the National Treasury was sufficiently philanthropic to reduce the figure. Parliament said we can spend 4.2 trillion shillings next year. So the finance bill has to be one that looks at how to raise 4.2 trillion shillings. Well, okay, now let's talk about 3.9 trillion shillings. Would you fault the National Treasury for trying to go wherever it could, find a crack to get revenue?
Thank you very much for that question. Maybe just to provide context, from a tax policy perspective, it has really been a journey. And I'll give you some two illustrations. Last year, we really put in public participation on the tax policy, which is a document that is extremely critical for a nation, because that is what really stipulates how taxes should head. Then we also made submissions of the medium-term revenue strategy. That is also an extremely important document, because it tells you how do we expect to raise the revenue, for example, in the next 3 to 5 years. Those two documents, we were involved in public participation. It's actually important to say that some of the proposals and some of the content in the MTRS and in the national tax policy, we are seeing them in the finance bill. So to some extent, they've actually informed what is in the finance bill. However, there are some proposals in the finance bill that we also got a shock, where are these from? And I think those are the most contentious issues. Now, to provide context on revenue collection, last year, our budget was 3.6 trillion. Our target from a revenue perspective was about 2.5 trillion. Yeah. As at March, we had raised 1.7 trillion. Hopefully, as at the end of the year, we will do the 0.7 billion, the 700 billion, so as to cover for the deficit. Now we are getting into new expenditure, new year. As my colleagues have rightly stated, expenditure has increased. I always say with government, it's the only place where we first have expenditure and you look for the money. Yeah. In our homes, we first look for the money and then you determine how you need to spend. And I think that's the nature of government. Now, the measures that we are seeing in the finance bill are supposed to raise about 300 billion additional income so as to cover that deficit. And even with that, that takes us to about 2.8. Our expenditure is 3.9, so debt capital will still need to be raised, but we need to be certain that the 2.9 can at least be raised. We are seeing those measures in the finance bill. Some measures are good, and you can tell some measures are as a result of the constant engagements, and I hope we can be able to share those as well. However, some of them are really tricky, Because what happens is that you may think you're raising revenue on one hand, but you're actually killing an economy. You're killing a specific sector, and because tax has a multiplier effect, it has to be done so carefully so that it does not result into a distortionary impact on the economy. Latif, taxation is such a skill to the extent that you should be able to raise the required revenue, but at the same time ensure that the businesses thrive. I think that balance is what is very difficult to achieve and requires a lot of stakeholder engagement, because government's business is to do government.
Yeah.
Our business is to do business. So for us, it has to be a concerted partnership between government and the business so as to ensure that the level of taxation is sustainable in order to raise the required revenues, but keep the businesses going. Thank you.
And it's a skill.
It is a skill.
Anthony, do you think we have that skill?
I think we do. I think we do.
As demonstrated by?
As demonstrated by the history.
Okay.
The history may not have been rosy. You can imagine, for 60 years, the economy, and it's good always to look at the history. We started off with South Korea. We were actually better than them in 60s. We were better than Vietnamese in 60s. We were better than Malaysians. But you can see where today we are less than 10% of the economy. And it's not because of anything else. It's about consistency and how you build your policy. Now, for CAM, this is one of the most consequential policy document, because it affects us. Actually, it can either make our businesses or kill our businesses. And for us, the budget making process is a continuous process. After the enactment of this Finance Act 2024, we'll immediately start on the analysis of what was adopted, what is contained in the bill, in the act, so that we can advise our members. After that, it is to again engage with the ministries and say post-budget process, where we say, this is what we proposed, this is what you've adopted, and we think this is what is going to happen by what you have done. And then we say, because we want to be very helpful, we want to be very collaborative, we start bringing our members together and say, we did not win last year. We did not win on this 2024, or we achieved a strike rate of 10% out of the 100% of what we presented. However, all is not lost. Let us try to be better so that next year we provide proactively the proposals. Not only of not how to reduce the taxes, no, on how to make sure the government actually is making more without killing the economy, as Christine has said and other panelists have said. So for us, it is a never-ending process. And that is why we are very, very deliberate. And we put in proposals, one sector by the other. And we've had a lot of meetings with the government and said, we are now generating 362,000 jobs. We can actually generate 1 million. And they say, how are you going to do that? We bring together our members and say, assume you are given all the policy instruments that you have. What do you see in the marketplace? We even say domestic, regional, and international. Yeah. And we coined even a phrase, you say, the size of the pie, that is the total market share. What can we address? Step by step. From leather and footwear, to textile and apparels, to chemicals, to building construction, export market, regional market, export. And we come up and say, we have evidence that if we walk this path, we are going to increase your taxes, not 360 billion you are contributing today, which is 18%, 1 trillion, 1 million jobs, 8 trillion value addition. Now we are 3 trillion value addition. So we are not just there complaining what we need and what, It is how do we grow the pie
For all
together,
of us to benefit.
for all of us.
And who do you tell these things?
So obviously, government is organizing, in ministries and technical ministries. Our mother ministry, obviously, is a Ministry of Industry and Investment. We have very good working relationship. And of course, government is also big. Sometimes they take on board, like this year, they took on board about 10% of what we presented, which we thank them for that. But as the process rolls down to other processes, to other government and other people bring their inputs, you find that sometimes also the ideas are taken, others are not taken.
Right.
All right? So, but it's a very elaborate process.
Do they give you feedback? Do they tell you, we have taken 10% for now, and the other 90%, we will stagger it over the next 6 years? I mean, do you get any kind of...
So if you to draw the journey map,
Yeah.
the journey map, first we call our members, because also we have competing interests among our membership. So the first thing that we do is to bring them together sector, subsector by subsector, and harmonize our interests. They say, this is what you need, but you're going to affect the other person, because the raw material that is used by one person is a intermediate raw material for the other sector or the other individual or another company. So we harmonize all those positions and take a harmonized, calm manufacturing position to the ministry concerned. And as we discuss with them, because we spend almost the whole day with them, we agree on 90% of the issues. Then we take those issues together to the National Treasury. When we get to National Treasury, we agree on about 70% of the issues.
With your parent ministry?
With the
as your
parent ministry
advocates.
and the National Treasury.
And your
This is
ministry
how
here,
to
the
collect.
ministry is your advocate at this table?
Yes.
Okay.
Ostensibly, yes. However, the other processes, the other people also bring in their views. By the time the bill, and this time it was even very interesting, the bill that came out, the draft bill, was actually very progressive. And we said, I think this time we've got it. But the final bill that came out was completely different. So it was very baffling. And the one that came out had actually very good prospects. For instance, if you're bringing in a machinery for 1 billion shillings, why do you need to pay VAT and then claim it? While this can be used for your working capital and you generate much more. That came out with the draft bill. But when it came out the final bill, it was not there. So there is a lot of, and I say the process of making a policy is like sausage making. It's not pleasant. But we hope, because this is science, I hope the next time we do this, so that we don't find ourselves around the mountain all the time, it is based on data, it's based on science, and now we have a lot of tools that we can use to verify data. There's big data, there's AI. We are now being forced to invest in some of those big data and AI and data analytics, so that then we can show government that this is input, this is output.
And you can hopefully convince
And regrettably, some of the things that we analyzed in 2023 and told them, this is going to happen, you've taken this levy, it's going to kill these sectors. Now we go back and say, we told you, and it has happened. So we don't want to go back and say, we told you so.
And
it has happened.
warned. Eric, your sector, the alcoholic beverages sector, is one which has historically been considered a low-hanging fruit by the taxman. So every time when they're thinking about tax, they start, okay, so Pombe, and then they go to other places, all right? How do you engage with government? When they look at you and they're just seeing the fat cow that's just walked into the slaughterhouse, how do you ever engage with government?
Indeed, and it has been a very sad reality that anytime there is a finance bill, you can be sure there's a tax increase on alcohol. Now, we've had several engagements, and maybe just to set the context, in 2023, we actually engaged as an association with the government, and we were able to tell them something, that the level of illicit alcohol has significantly grown. To give you the context, we did a research together with the government and hired some international consultants because we wanted to find out what is the level of illicit alcohol. And sadly, we found that as a country, 59% of alcohol sold in Kenya is illicit. And one of the main reasons that illicit is thriving is because, sadly, consumers cannot afford legitimate alcohol, and consumers are actually shifting to illicit. So because of that, and as we were engaging the government in 2023, the government had us. It actually had a freeze because they understood the rates that are there quite high. And as a result of that, we actually saw there is more collection, like for example on beer. Wine and spirit has slightly dipped compared to 2022 and 2023, but the government gained more. So out of that, we learned something, and we started telling the government, you don't have to increase. We just need to eat into this other share of illicit, and we can be able to jointly work together and do that. We've also seen the government also now listened to us and decided they'll also put heightened enforcement measures. So we've seen the crackdowns that are happening, and the crackdowns are things that we've been telling the government we need to heighten this element, especially on the illicit angle. And we've been able to ensure that at the end of the day, we are able to do it from enforcement. Again, we had also conversation now coming to this finance bill. We were involved in a study as an industry, which was being led by Africa Economic Research Consortium. There were people from National Treasury, KIPRA, University of Copenhagen, and we were able to share all the data. For us, in fact, we welcomed that way of making data decision across our industry. So we were able to share the data. We had several discussions. There were even scenarios that were kept, especially for spirits,
right,
where you find there were several scenarios that were there. So for us, we felt this is the way to go, and we agreed on the principle. I think the bill shocked us with the quantum or the rates that they proposed.
I see. Eric, we'll get into the details of that. I just want us to get to Noah Kipkemboi, my colleague, who is here with industry sector players who are in the audience. Noah, let's engage with one or two of them just to hear their sentiment, and then we go to the news. We get Katie and Leo, and then we'll come back and continue this conversation after Katie and Leo. But Noah, let's hear from some of the sector players.
All right, thank you very much, Latif. At this particular moment, first of all, we've handled the macro angle of this thing. And there is a particular feeling that I don't know whether these subsector players feel hard going by the Finance Bill 2023 and how it panned out, and now we are in Finance Bill 2024 and how we are prophesying things will pan out. So very quickly, I'm going to pick one person at random. This is the classic case of ambushing a person, which I've perfected on screen. And so you look very, very sharp. Good evening to you. You can have this microphone.
Thank you so much.
Kindly introduce yourself. From which industry are you operating
I
from?
represent baby diaper and sanitary pad subsector from CAM. My name is Rajiv Joshi.
Mr. Rajiv, just briefly, from the broad, even before later on we'll be going into specifics, but from the broader perspective, we have the Association of Manufacturers representative down there who normally appear before these sessions to represent you. Do you feel heard and seen by the government? If yes or no, why?
Well, as he said, the proposed finance bill which has come out has really surprised us. He has had sessions, including us, and we have been proposing different things which were for the betterment of manufacturers. But now when the proposal has come, it is something very, very different. We had not expected this.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. And that is the reality, that sometimes you propose something and you receive a curveball in return. So in that spirit, we went to take a short break right here at the Transform Kenya. We're handling the Finance Bill 2024, especially with manufacturers in the building. Question is the government listening? Because laugh a curve is real. We'll go for a break, then return with more discussion. Stay tuned.